Good morning, seniors. So today's Futures Day, and you guys have taken part in this for several years now. This year we switched things up just a little bit. In replace of the college fair, there were some workshops this morning, so I hope many of you got an opportunity to get to one or several of those workshops today, and I hope you found them useful. What we're going to do now is we recorded a series of interviews with professionals and folks out in from Framingham, in the public, some of them in the school system. And the idea behind these interviews is designed to get you a little bit of a glimpse into where people found themselves professionally and how they got there. So this morning we're going to start with an interview with our new superintendent, Dr. Scott, and each person was asked really basically the same questions. So you'll be able to take a look here at Dr. Scott, and he is going to talk a little bit about what high school was like for him and how he found himself in the profession he is in now. So that will be our first interview, starting with Dr. Scott.
Hi, Dr. Stacy Scott, Superintendent of Schools. Nice to be able to take a moment and to talk a little bit about my own career on this Futures Day. We hope for a great future for you, and so one of the most important things in terms of thinking about your future is listening to other people as they talk about how they got where they're going. Sometimes it seems as if some people have a plan from the very beginning and know exactly where they're going from the beginning, but rarely is that the case, or even more rarely does it actually work out exactly the way we plan. Think of it more like a journey and a discovery over time. I think that the issue is sort of discovering what you're passionate about, what you're interested in, and melding those things together into a view of the world that will make you happy, and make you excited, and make you useful. I found in high school I loved Spanish. I created the Spanish club when they brought Spanish to my high school in the 10th grade, and just enjoyed the culture and the language and just tried to get into it as much as I could. I also loved math. I wasn't the best at it. I just loved doing it. I loved the hard problems, and I loved studying it. And I took one psychology course, and that fascinated me. And I was really interested in that. I was really interested in the religion and philosophy courses as well. Between those things, I just slowly began to pull together the things that I was interested in. Because I was interested in how societies formed and how they came together to do the things that were important, like education and managing community. And so when I went to college, I just chose to study the courses that I was interested in. So I took a course in psychology, I took courses in government, and courses in language. I got the worst grade ever in my first psychology course in college, and I never in the next 4 years took another psychology course in college at all. But as you probably know by now, I went on later when I went to graduate school, and I came back and got a license in psychology. I did my doctorate in psychology because it was what I was interested in, but what I realized later is that I did not like the way that they studied psychology in the college level. I loved the way they studied it at the graduate level. Much more developmental than it was biological, and that was more what I needed. And so in college, I chose the areas that I was interested in, and I tested them out. Government was interesting to me, and I continued with government. I looked at how education was managed within different parts of the world and how governments were formed in their history, and I loved international government. And I thought I'd be a diplomat. It seemed like a natural direction to go in as a result of where I began. So I studied language and a little bit of Spanish, and I didn't actually like the higher levels of Spanish, too much emphasis on phonetics, and I think they were planning for a different future than what I was looking for. And so I took a little bit of Spanish and got reasonably good at it, and then left it alone. And so I focused on government, and actually have worked and supported issues related to government. I was appointed by the governor in Massachusetts at one point to be on the State Board of Education in 1993, and so I was sort of working out my interest in government by being an appointed person, but I never actually ran for office. And I enjoyed helping to work on public policy issues, and I still do. Government will always be something that I'm interested in. But some things that we love early on become vocations, and some things, they become avocations. So I didn't really know what I was going to be. And if I were to have followed the exact plan, I would have gone on and become a lawyer, but I might not have pursued my passions for psychology and how people solve problems in society. I think that's what I really love to be able to do. So over time, what I chose to do was to train and to get better at the things that I love to do. So I studied psychology to understand how people thought and how they solved problems and how they worked together. And then I continued to work to train teachers because I wanted to understand how to help people to be really good at helping children develop. And then I began working with leaders and leadership development in school systems because I wanted to understand how do you create the best school system that helps to support teachers to be the best that they can to support children to do what they need. And then I decided to become a superintendent because it was a way to directly help teachers and parents and students to really be all that they can be. And that's kind of how I got where I was going over time. What I love most about what I do now is I love solving problems. I love to be in a position where I can help to support the way that people work together to make the school system as good as it can be. I love to be able to use what I know in psychology to support people so that they can perform the best that they can perform. And I love my work in government because a lot of what I do is political, helping people to think about the vision for our society and how we might grow to becoming effective in all that we do. Well, it's nice to take a few minutes to be with you, and I wish you well in your future, and hopefully you'll have lots of stories about how other people are pursuing their future, and that'll help you to decide how your future should become. Take care.
So you've heard from Dr. Scott now, and you saw that one perspective. The next individual we're going to hear from is Ms. Rivera, and some of you that had gone to Fuller may remember Ms. Rivera as your guidance counselor. So now we're going to hear from Ms. Rivera and get her take on both high school, college, and the avenue and choices that she made to get herself to where she's at as a guidance counselor in Framingham Public Schools. So here's Ms. Rivera.
My name is Magali Rivera. I work at Fuller Middle School, and I've been working at Fuller Middle School as a guidance counselor for the past 6 years. And let's see, my high school experience was, I want to say, the best experience I had in public schools in Boston. I grew up in Dorchester, and I was actually supposed to go to Madison Park High School. And I had heard about a charter school that was opening, and I applied, and I got in. And I got into City on the Hill Charter School, and I want to say that was the best decision of my life. It helped me find a path, a course. I had lots of teachers that cared and were supportive, and really drove home the desires that I developed to go to college. So I actually had a really good high school experience. I didn't, however, know what I wanted to pursue for a career. I found it really daunting that at 16, 17, I had to know what I wanted to do. There was no way for me to figure that out. And it wasn't until I went to college that I fine-tuned that. I had an idea that I wanted to be a physical therapist because I grew up with a sister who was handicapped and in a wheelchair and had a lot of physical therapy growing up. So I thought, from growing up seeing that I would be good at it. But it wasn't until I took my first psychology course in college that I realized I'm much more interested in human behavior than I was at correcting physical ailments. So I pursued psychology courses and got my major in that. Then, and I had so many odd jobs, but one of the ones that I had was working as a tutor in America Reads program. And then I started working over the summers as a teacher at summer camps. And then that's how I developed my interest in working with little kids. So my passion in psychology really honed in working with kids, a specific age group. And then when my 4 years, which went by in a blink of an eye, ended, I had to figure out what I wanted to do with a psychology degree. Did I want to go to graduate school? I didn't know really what I wanted to pursue. Or could I find employment after my bachelor's degree? But I decided with a lot of thought that I wanted to go into the field of guidance counseling. I really didn't feel like I wanted to become a teacher, but I knew I wanted to work with kids. So I got into this field, and it was the best choice I had ever made. And I really drew upon my own personal experiences growing up, seeing a lot of kids, in my neighborhood that didn't make it, who, got pregnant at a very young age, or who quit school at a very young age, or got really wrapped up in a lot of negative things. All that stuff affected me, and I wanted to find a career that I could help shape people's lives in some way. Well, I've always been a very go-getter kind of a person, so achieving my goals was not difficult. As long as I had a path and a focus, I worked really hard. I was the first person in my family to go to college, and so I had to do a lot of these things for myself. My parents, primarily spoke Spanish, so a lot of these things that were all in English, I really was trying to help them understand the process as much as I was trying to teach it for myself. So I've always been really go-getter, and I figured out that this was just my passion, and I've been really happy, and I love what I do every single day. I'm really lucky.
Our third interview this morning is with who was our own Mr. Banks, who is now not with us. He's at Newton as a headmaster, or housemaster, that is. But we had the opportunity to interview Mr. Banks. He was here about a week or so ago, and he is going to talk as well. The same questions, but you'll see differing perspectives and differing avenues. So here's our interview with Mr. Banks.
I got to know the teachers, and I definitely made myself known, and I was a person who liked to be out and about getting to know the people. So high school was fantastic, and I knew in high school that I wanted to be a teacher, so we had student-teacher swap day at my high school, so I got to become my English teacher for a day, which was fantastic. And yeah, high school was great, so loved every moment of it. Question number 2, did I know what I wanted to do for a career when I was preparing to leave high school? Yes, I've known I wanted to be a teacher since the 3rd grade. So I was that dorky kid who would hang out maybe, in the basement with some imaginary people and teach them. Fine, do with that what you will. But ever since the 3rd grade, I knew I wanted to be a teacher, and I've sort of just stayed on that track. In the 8th grade, I knew I wanted to be an English teacher. Once again, in my middle school, we had student-teacher swap day, and I got to become my English teacher for a day, and I got to teach the comma, which I thought was the best experience ever. Who knew that well into my career I would still have some trouble teaching the comma, but I got it, and it's okay. So I knew I wanted to be a specific type of English teacher in the 11th grade. It was my 11th grade English teacher who sort of made me the English teacher I became, and I definitely modeled myself after him. And I applied early decision to Boston College and got in, and I didn't apply to any other school. I got into BC School of Ed, and my grandfather was not happy with the fact that I only applied to one school, but I didn't. Got in, went to BC, got a bachelor's there, stayed for an extra year, got my master's in special education, and now here I am as a vice principal or a housemaster at Newton South. Question number 3. I answered in question number 2, how did I achieve my goal? I'm not going to repeat myself. I applied to BC, got in early, did everything I needed to do, went on scholarship, and kept the grades up, because it's always all about grades. So make sure you're doing well in your high school classes. And if not, you can always do well in your college classes. Question number 4. I can't answer because I didn't lose my focus. Question number 4 asks, when did my career goals come into focus? They came into focus when I was 8 years old. I have an essay that I wrote that I've read to my students every year that I've taught when I was in the 3rd grade. The essay which also states what my favorite sport is, one I'm really good at. And in that essay, I say that I want to be a teacher when I grow up. And then finally, question number 5, what is it that I love about my career now? I love working with students. It's the reason why I became a teacher, just getting to know people, helping students, helping to mold the people that they become. As I like to tell my students, I'm one person making a small change that is collectively making a big difference. So with that being said, I just love, I know, aw. So with that being said, I just love being a teacher, helping all types of people. In order to be a teacher, you have to be an open-minded person, because students are coming with their own stories. And you have to be very understanding of those stories. And I'd like to think that students feel comfortable talking to me and telling me their issues, and especially now as a vice principal or a housemaster, I'm definitely learning that students really do or can use teachers to their advantage. So my advice to you is use your teachers, use your guidance counselors, use your vice principal to your advantage, seniors. Talk to Mr. Convery. He's a good guy, and he definitely has some sage advice on how to make it. And if anything, he will get you to laugh, because he's a funny person. So that's about it from my end. I wish you the very best of luck after high school, and if you're ever bored, don't hesitate to come by Newton South and say hello. Good luck, class of 2013, and best wishes.
The next interview is a less traditional path towards a profession, and this interview is actually with my older sister. Carolyn Rice is her name, and Carolyn has been with the circus, traveling with the circus, I think since around 1987 or 88. But you'll hear from her in the interview that it's actually something she had an interest in since she was a very young girl. So her path is a little less traditional than some of the other ones you've heard from, but no less interesting. And so I'll let my sister Carolyn speak for herself. So here's the interview with Carolyn Rice, my big sister.
I am Carolyn Rice, and I am a circus performer. I went to Framingham High School back when it was Framingham South High. My high school years were awkward. I had a group of friends, boyfriends, I did gymnastics, pom-pom girls track, but I just never felt like I fit in. It seemed like everyone was having so much more fun than I was, and I was missing something. Definitely not the best years of my life. Well, sophomore year, go to my guidance counselor, Miss Schomer, who says, "Now, Carolyn, what do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to be in the circus." She said, "Carolyn, there's a difference between fantasy and reality. What do you really want to do?" And I said, "Work on a ranch." Well, I ended up as a biology major at UMass North Dartmouth. That was the closest we could come. Go figure. After my sophomore year, I dropped out. It was horrible. My dad was a principal. Most of my brothers and sisters are educators. Education was huge in our family. But I just couldn't see myself paying off student loans waitressing because I didn't want to be a biologist. I wanted to work with animals and perform. Bought an old pickup truck, a 65 Dodge flatbed, which was old even then, and headed out west. Well, I got a job on a ranch. Within a year, I was managing the ranch and found out that hard work does pay off. I didn't have the experience, but I was willing to work hard. Well, whenever the circus would come through, I would try and sneak backstage and meet the performers. And at one point, I actually got an audition on Ringling Brothers as a dancer. And the dance captain looked at me and said, "Well, you look all right, but you need to take some dance classes." I thought I was a great dancer. I could sure dance at the clubs. Well, at any rate, I started studying dance. I was in my 20s, which was not the time most people start to study dance. I would ride horses all day from 5 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, and then I would go to dance class 3-4 hours a night. My friends would say, "Hey, don't go to dance tonight. Stay, have a beer, party." No, you don't understand. One of my dance teachers once said to me, "What are you doing? Why are you working so hard? You'll never be a dancer." Well, maybe not on Broadway or ballerina, but there's other kinds of dance. A few years later, I was training horses in Tennessee, and at one of the dance studios where I was dancing, there was a sign for auditions, Ringling Brothers, coming through to audition for dancers. Ugh. And I went. And I was horrible. At least so I thought. But it was a good audition experience. Met the choreographer. A week later, I got the call from Ringling Brothers. They hired me as a dancer. Yes, my dream came true. Out on the floor, elephants, animals, costumes, spotlights. And since then, I've got to train giraffes, hippos, llamas, goats, dogs, zebras, camels, ostriches, all kinds of animals. I met my husband in the circus, who's a tiger trainer, elephant trainer. He's trained all kinds of animals as well. We travel all over together with our animals, and my life is fabulous. So remember the old Chinese proverb, when someone says something is impossible, they shouldn't interrupt the person doing it. Follow your dreams. Good luck.
And the last interview we have this morning is our very own Mr. Devlin. Mr. Devlin, obviously you know, runs our TV studio downstairs and television production classes. And Mr. Devlin also had an interesting path getting him to where he is today. So we'll let Mr. Devlin take it away.
Hi, I'm Dan Devlin. I teach television production here at Framingham High School. But I wasn't always headed this way. You wanted me to talk about high school experiences. I goofed off. I mean, I had fun. I was the class clown and raised Cain and got by with grades, was more concerned about getting laughs and chasing down a good time. Ended up with 14 days left in my high school career. The administration decided to call me on a Friday night at where I worked at this restaurant and tell me don't bother coming back. They expelled me with 14 days left in my senior career. I wasn't allowed to walk with the class. I do have the same diploma as everybody else because I went to college and earned it, but it's, stuck in my craw. Along the way, my classmates decided that in the superlatives, they had most likely to be a bum, and I was chosen most likely to be a bum. Well, since then, continued to work in different jobs in restaurants. I really liked restaurants, but I knew I had to go to school for something, and I wandered into my local community college, and I found this program called television production. I really didn't know what it was about. I didn't know what I wanted to do for a career. In fact, in my small town, there were really only a couple of jobs. You could work in the local fire department, or you could be a farmer, or you could work in the local factory. Or you could be like some of my friends, in fact, most of my friends, who, along with myself, took masonry class in school. That's bricklaying and block laying. I'm not really a block layer, a bricklayer. I want too much fun out of things. So I went to this college, and I ran into a spectacular teacher named Brooke Saunders, and graduated there. And out of that small school, 21 kids in that program, I know of 13 that work in the television industry. I don't know if any of them have it as good as I have it here, though. I went on from there to go to Ithaca College, and then came up here to Boston to go to Emerson College, where I got a degree in creative writing and literature with a minor in philosophical studies. I ended up graduating cum laude at my college. Pretty darn good for married with a full-time job and everything else. I was a little bit older than my classmates, and I loved my college experience. One thing I learned was I simply moved to the front of the class from the back of the class where I used to raise hell, I moved to the front of the class and really paid attention to the teacher. For one thing, in college, I was picking my own classes. I was taking them for a reason. I actually wanted to go. From there, I wrote a script while I was there, and I took that script to California, sold it to Seinfeld, wrote jokes for up-and-coming comedians, worked in the television industry. I was in a few videos, few movies that you may have heard of. But still, I never really lost that independentness. I still wanted to do my own thing and find a way to make it work. There was a book one time while I was in the bookstore that said, "Do what you want and the money will follow." I never read the book, but the title always stuck with me, that there must be something, someplace that can appreciate my hyperactivity and my drive to do jobs right and to help people. And eventually, through a long and meandering road, we got back to Boston, and I said, my great aunt and my father told me you'd make a great teacher. I'll tell you the truth, the last thing I wanted to do was teach a bunch of kids like Dan Devlin and Joe Walpole and Mike McCarty, my friends. I didn't think I could stand that. So I started out teaching in Chelsea, teaching elementary education. That was my first certification. I loved those kids, but I couldn't be myself enough around them. And so when an opening came, my wife dragged me out to Framingham Public Schools, where they were setting up a television program that I guess the program had been there for years, but it hadn't done anything in a long time. I met a man named Tim Magner, who was the head of the Office of Technology, and he was ready to start a TV studio. And then at that point in my life, I was ready to run a TV studio. I'd worked in TV studios, I'd edited for broadcast, but I'd never run a whole studio. Since that time, I've given the commencement speech at my college. I have earned Teacher of the Year until they stopped doing that honor. I have been, I've earned quite a bit of respect, and my kids, my students here, have earned a lot of accolades. These kids over the last, this will be my 15th year here at Framingham High School, and over those years, we've won 14 Emmy Awards, real Emmy Awards for high school television production. We do 170 shows of Flyer News a year, which broadcasts to the town. We do things that no other school in the country does. If I could get across one thing to anybody who's listened to me, is that high school is not the end of things. It's just the beginning. You can write your own path when you get out of here. So far, you've had to deal with cliques and groups and people who want you to do things. When you get out of here, you can find your own way. There's really, really a whole world out there, and it's not confined to what people might think you're supposed to do. The world is really open to you, and I hope you go out and look for something that will make you happy. That's the biggest thing. Make yourself happy, and the money will follow. Hey, you don't get rich being a teacher, but in here, you know, you get stuff. You feel good. I hope you guys find something as good as what I've found.
Well, as you can see, lots of differing perspectives, lots of differing avenues, bringing people to the professional careers they find themselves in today. There's no one right way to go about it. As a matter of fact, you may go about finding one avenue and 10 or 15 years down the road decide that that wasn't what you wanted at all. And you can switch that up as well. Never too late, not one avenue, lots of possibilities. Really, I think we could sum it up with follow your passion, and you can make that happen. So I'm out. I'm going to transition now to Miss Lucy, who's going to speak briefly about the True Colors activity that the homeroom teachers have ready for you guys to do. Hopefully you'll find it interesting, informative, and educational, and hopefully the whole morning has been a positive experience for all of you. So I'm going to pass it over to Miss Lucy. Thank you.
Good morning, seniors. We have you this morning participating in some programs that are going to help you get ready for life after Framingham High School. One of the activities that we're going to have you do this morning is called True Colors. It's a personality survey, test if you will, that's going to tell you what color you are. And the color is actually going to be associated with a lot of attributes or personality traits that you have. And what's really fun about it is you'll learn a lot about yourself, you'll learn a lot about your friends, you'll learn something about your homeroom teacher, but it's something you can take home and share with your friends and family, boyfriend, girlfriend. It's a really great tool for you to use moving forward and teach you how to relate to others when you know their color. Good luck and have fun.